On September 5, 1977, something happened that no one watching the launch truly understood at the time.
2, 1. MDS. We have ignition. We have a liftoff.
Roll program is in on time. Vehicle response is normal.
Because while it looked like just another rocket disappearing into the sky, it was actually the moment humanity let go of something it would never be able to call back. The Voyager spacecraft did not rise with fanfare about immortality or legacy, but with practical goals, scientific curiosity, and a quiet confidence that the mission would last a few years at most. No one at Cape Canaveral that morning imagined that this machine would still be traveling through space tens of thousands of years after their names, their cities, and possibly their species had faded away. The launch was framed as exploration, but in retrospect it was something far more permanent, because for the first time in history, Earth released an object that was not designed to return, not designed to stop, and not designed to wait for us. Voyager was humanity's first true message in a bottle, thrown not into an ocean, but into time itself. It carried a golden record etched with sounds, images, music, and greetings, not because anyone expected it to be found soon, but because someone felt it would be wrong to send nothing at all. That decision alone reveals something deeply human. The idea that even when the odds are meaningless and the distance is cruel, we still choose to say, "We were here." The rocket burned, the spacecraft escaped Earth's gravity, and history quietly crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed, because Voyager is not just traveling through space, it is traveling away from relevance, away from context, away from the civilization that made it. Today, nearly 5 decades later, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are the most distant human-made objects in existence, so far away that their signals take more than a day to reach Earth, and even that connection is fading. Their power is dwindling, their instruments are shutting down one by one, and soon, they will fall completely silent. Most people believe that this is where their story ends, that when the batteries die and the signal stops, Voyager becomes a relic, frozen, finished, and irrelevant. But that belief is the fundamental misunderstanding at the heart of this story, because silence does not mean stillness, and the end of communication is not the end of existence. Voyager does not stop when we stop listening. It does not slow down when its power fades. It does not drift aimlessly or fall apart the moment its mission clock runs out. Voyager keeps going, obeying the same laws of motion that govern stars and galaxies, continuing forward long after Earth forgets to remember it. Right now, as you listen to this, Voyager is already outside the heliosphere, beyond the protective bubble of the sun's influence, moving through interstellar space where no human-made object has ever traveled before. It is already something else, no longer a probe of the solar system, but a traveler of the galaxy. And this is where the story becomes unsettling. Because if Voyager has come this far in less than a human lifetime, then time itself becomes the real engine of its journey. 40,000 years from now is not a thought experiment for Voyager. It is simply a stretch of uninterrupted motion. 200,000 years from now is not speculation, it is trajectory. 1,000,000 years from now is not fantasy, it is inevitability. Long after the last radio transmission fades into background noise, long after Earth's surface has changed beyond recognition, Voyager will still be moving, carrying with it a record of who we were at a moment when we still believed the future belonged to us. The probe does not know it is a message. It does not know it is historic. It does not know it is alone. It simply moves, silently and endlessly, through a universe that does not care whether it is remembered. That is what makes Voyager terrifying and beautiful at the same time, because it guarantees that even if humanity disappears completely, even if Earth becomes just another lifeless rock orbiting a dying star, something made by human hands will continue onward, untouched by extinction. Voyager does not preserve our survival, but it preserves our existence as fact. It is proof that we happened. It is evidence that intelligence once looked outward and chose curiosity over fear. The golden record is not a plea for rescue, not a declaration of dominance, but a quiet introduction offered to no one in particular, written in the hope that meaning itself might outlive us. And the most haunting part is that Voyager does not need to be found for that meaning to exist, because the act of sending it already changed us. We became a species willing to think beyond its own lifespan. We became a civilization that acknowledged it might not last, and still chose to leave a trace. This is why the story of Voyager does not end when its power dies, because power was never the point. Motion was. Time was. The universe itself became the mission clock, and it does not stop counting. To understand where Voyager is going, we must first abandon the comforting idea that missions end when contact is lost, because Voyager's true journey begins only after we fall silent. And to understand that journey, we must start by correcting the single biggest misunderstanding about these probes, which is the belief that they were ever meant to have an ending at all, a realization that leads directly into the next chapter, where we dismantle the idea that Voyager's story is already over, and discover why its future is far longer than its past. The biggest misunderstanding about the Voyager spacecraft is not about where they are, but about when their story is supposed to end, because most people unconsciously tie meaning to communication, assuming that when a signal stops, existence stops with it. This idea feels intuitive, because in human life, silence often means absence, and endings are usually loud enough for us to notice. But Voyager does not operate on human timelines or emotional logic. It operates on physics. And physics does not recognize mission endings, battery lifespans, or farewell transmissions. When Voyager's radio signal finally fades and its power sources fall silent, nothing about the spacecraft's motion changes, nothing about its trajectory alters, and nothing about its existence concludes. The probes do not shut down in the way machines on Earth do, collapsing into stillness or decay. Instead, they simply lose the ability to speak, and silence, in space, is not death, it is the default state. Voyager was never kept alive by electricity in the way a living organism is. It was set in motion by gravity, and gravity does not expire. This is where the misunderstanding begins, because the public narrative frames Voyager as a mission with a start and an end, a project that succeeds or fails within a defined window of time. That framing made sense when Voyager was flying past Jupiter and Saturn, sending back images and discoveries that redefined our understanding of the solar system. But once those encounters ended, the story quietly shifted, even though the spacecraft did not. Instruments were turned off not because Voyager was finished, but because power had to be conserved. Experiments ended not because the journey ended, but because priorities changed. The idea of mission end is a human convenience, not a cosmic reality. In truth, Voyager's mission phase was always the shortest and least important part of its existence. The real mission began the moment it escaped the gravitational grip of the planets and entered a regime where nothing would meaningfully slow it down. Once Voyager left the inner solar system, it became something unprecedented, an object permanently detached from Earth's influence, not orbiting, not returning, and not waiting. Even the sun's gravity, vast as it is, cannot pull Voyager back, because the spacecraft is moving fast enough to climb out of the solar system's gravitational well and keep going indefinitely. This is not poetic language. It is a measurable fact encoded in its velocity and direction. Voyager is no longer a visitor. It is an emigrant. The misunderstanding persists because humans instinctively assign endings where none exist, especially when technology goes quiet. We imagine Voyager drifting to a halt, frozen in space like a car running out of fuel. But space does not work that way. In the near vacuum between stars, there is almost nothing to slow an object down. No air resistance, no friction, no gradual decay of motion. Voyager will not stop unless it collides with something, and the odds of that happening in the vastness of interstellar space are so small they border on meaningless. This means that the day Voyager's last transmission is received on Earth is not the end of its journey, but the moment it becomes truly independent of us. After that day, Voyager will exist in a universe where Earth has no influence over it at all. It will not receive commands, it will not respond. It will not acknowledge our presence. And yet, it will continue forward, carrying the physical imprint of humanity deeper into the galaxy than any other object we have ever made. This is difficult to internalize because human history trains us to think in terms of preservation and decay, of monuments eroding and machines breaking down. But Voyager is not a monument exposed to weather or erosion. It is a small, dense object drifting through near-perfect emptiness. Its materials will not rust. Its structure will not collapse. Its golden record will not rot. Over immense spans of time, radiation and micrometeoroid impacts will slowly scar its surface. But those processes unfold over millions to billions of years, not decades. Voyager's survival is not fragile, it is almost boringly stable. The spacecraft does not need maintenance, protection, or care to persist. It simply needs space, and the universe offers that in excess. This is why Voyager's silence is so misleading. Because it tricks us into thinking the story is over, when in reality it has only shed the part we were able to witness. Communication was never the essence of Voyager's journey. It was merely the brief overlap between its existence and our attention. Once that overlap ends, Voyager does not become irrelevant, it becomes untethered. It transforms from a tool into an artifact, from a probe into a fossil, from a mission into a permanent object embedded in the galaxy's future. This reframing forces us to confront an uncomfortable idea, which is that Voyager's importance increases as humanity's influence over it decreases. The less control we have, the more final its departure becomes. Voyager will never return to Earth. It will never orbit another planet. It will never wait for us to catch up. Its path was set by gravity assists decades ago, and those decisions echo forward through time with relentless consistency. When people say Voyager's batteries will die in the coming years, they are technically correct, but philosophically mistaken, because batteries are not what keep Voyager alive. Motion does, time does, space does. The probes are not aging in the way living things age, approaching an inevitable end, but simply moving from a phase of interaction into a phase of isolation. That isolation is not temporary. It is the longest chapter of their existence. And it is here that the story quietly becomes more unsettling. Because once we accept that Voyager does not end with silence, we are forced to ask a much larger question, which is not whether Voyager will continue, but where it will continue to go. If the probes are not drifting aimlessly, but following precise trajectories carved into space decades ago, then their future positions are not guesses or metaphors, but calculable facts. Physics allows us to trace their paths forward across tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions of years. Voyager's future is not a mystery in the abstract sense, but a map waiting to be unfolded. And once we understand that, once we stop thinking of Voyager as a completed mission and start thinking of it as a permanent traveler, the natural next step is to locate it, not just in space but in time, to ask where these silent machines are right now, how far they have already gone, and how far removed they already are from the world that built them. A question that leads directly into the next chapter, where we anchor ourselves in the present moment and trace where the Voyagers are today before letting time pull them even farther away. To understand where the Voyagers are going, we first have to confront where they already are, because their present position alone is enough to unsettle our sense of distance and belonging. Voyager 1, the faster of the two, is currently more than 24 billion kilometers from Earth, a number so large it stops meaning anything the moment we hear it. Light itself takes over 22 hours to travel from Voyager 1 back to Earth, which means every signal we receive is already a day old by the time it arrives. If Voyager were to vanish this instant, we would not know until tomorrow, and that delay will only grow longer as it continues onward. Voyager 2 follows a different path, slightly slower and on a separate trajectory, but it too has crossed a threshold no human-made object ever had before. Both probes have passed beyond the heliosphere, the vast magnetic bubble inflated by the sun that defines the edge of the solar system as a living environment. Inside this bubble, the sun's influence dominates, shaping solar wind, protecting planets from much of the galaxy's radiation, and creating a familiar cosmic neighborhood. Outside it, the rules change. Interstellar space is colder, quieter, and far less forgiving. The particles Voyager now encounters are not born of our star, but of distant stellar explosions and ancient cosmic processes that predate Earth itself. This is not symbolic distance, it is physical exile. Voyager is no longer in the solar system in any meaningful sense, even though gravity still faintly tethers it to the sun over enormous scales. It is moving through a region of space humanity has never occupied and may never physically reach. The loneliness of this position is difficult to overstate, because Voyager is not flying toward something familiar, but away from everything it ever knew. Earth is no longer a destination but a fading point behind it, growing smaller with every second. Even the planets it once visited are now far closer to Earth than they are to Voyager. The spacecraft exists in a regime where human intuition breaks down because distance is no longer measured in kilometers but in time and irreversibility. There is no practical way to catch up to Voyager. No future spacecraft can intercept it without expending energy and resources far beyond anything currently imaginable. Voyager is already ahead of us in a race we cannot rejoin. This realization reframes its current position as not merely far away, but fundamentally unreachable. The probes still communicate, faintly and with growing difficulty, using signals so weak they arrive at Earth as whispers barely distinguishable from background noise. Each year, engineers shut down another instrument to preserve dwindling power, carefully choosing which senses Voyager will keep for a little longer and which it must surrender. This process feels like aging, but it is not decay, it is prioritization, because Voyager was never meant to live forever as a communicator. The radio signal is the last thread connecting it to Earth, and that thread is stretching thinner every day. Yet even now, while Voyager still speaks, it is already far beyond rescue, correction, or recall. Its trajectory is fixed, its velocity is steady, its future is locked in. The present moment, then, is deceptive, because it feels like Voyager is still part of our world, simply because we can hear it. In reality, Voyager has already crossed into a future where Earth no longer matters to its motion. This is why its current location is more than a coordinate, it is a boundary. It marks the point where humanity's physical influence truly ends. Beyond this distance, we cannot send objects that return. We cannot retrieve mistakes, we cannot intervene. Voyager represents the furthest reach of our species' physical footprint. Not because it is impressive, but because it is final. And yet, even at this staggering distance, Voyager has barely begun its true journey. 24 billion kilometers feels enormous to us, but in galactic terms it is insignificant, a rounding error against the vastness of the Milky Way. The nearest star system lies more than 4 light-years away, a distance Voyager will not approach for tens of thousands of years. In this context, Voyager's current position is not an ending, but an opening move. It has stepped off the familiar board, and into a game that plays out over timescales far longer than civilizations endure. The spacecraft is now moving through space that will look almost identical thousands of years from now, because interstellar space changes slowly, indifferent to the rise and fall of planets and species. Voyager's silence will deepen as its power fades, but its motion will remain unchanged, carving a quiet, invisible line through the galaxy. And this is where perspective begins to tilt, because once we accept how far Voyager already is, we're forced to confront how little distance really means when time is allowed to stretch freely. If Voyager could travel this far in less than a century, then tens of thousands of years become not speculative fantasy, but a simple extension of its current motion. The present position of Voyager is not a snapshot, it is a vector, pointing relentlessly forward. To follow that vector, to truly grasp what Voyager has become, we must now stop thinking in terms of where it is, and start thinking in terms of where it will be. That requires abandoning the human habit of measuring journeys by lifetimes and embracing timescales where continents drift, stars move, and civilizations vanish. And once we do that, once we accept that Voyager's path is already written by physics and inertia, the next question becomes unavoidable, because if its trajectory is fixed and its motion unstoppable, then the future locations of these probes are not mysteries at all, but destinations waiting patiently in time, which leads us directly into the next chapter, where we follow the invisible lines already carved into space and discover that Voyager's future has been quietly determined since the moment it stole momentum from the giant planets and escaped the sun forever. Once Voyager escaped the last gravitational handshake with the giant planets, something irreversible happened. Because from that moment on, its future stopped being negotiable and became written into the geometry of space itself. The paths Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 follow are not guesses, not artistic interpretations, and not speculative projections, but the direct consequences of velocity, direction, and gravity calculated with ruthless precision decades ago. When Voyager flew past Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, it did not simply observe them. It stole something from them, borrowing tiny fractions of their orbital energy through gravity assists that permanently altered its speed and direction. Those maneuvers were not temporary boosts, but final decisions, because once the spacecraft left the influence of the last planet, there was nothing left in the solar system capable of meaningfully changing its course. Voyager has no engines powerful enough to redirect itself, no fuel to slow down, and no destination to aim for, only inertia carrying it forward through a universe that offers almost no resistance. In the vacuum of interstellar space, motion does not decay the way it does on Earth, because there is nothing to rub against, nothing to erode momentum, nothing to gently bring objects to rest. Voyager will not gradually slow down over time. It will continue at nearly the same speed for millions of years, limited only by the gravitational tides of stars it passes, and even those influences are subtle rather than decisive. This means that Voyager's future is not an unfolding narrative, but a straight line extended through time, a line so long that it pierces epochs we can barely conceptualize. The spacecraft is not wandering, drifting, or floating aimlessly. It is moving with purpose defined by physics rather than intention. Its velocity relative to the Sun is locked in, its direction fixed, and its path traceable forward with remarkable accuracy, because the galaxy itself evolves slowly compared to the speed at which Voyager moves. Stars orbit the center of the Milky Way, but they do so over hundreds of millions of years, and their relative motion across tens of thousands of years can be calculated with confidence. This allows astronomers to project Voyager's future positions not as metaphors, but as coordinates. When we say where Voyager will be in 40,000 years, we are not imagining, we are calculating. That realization strips the story of romance and replaces it with something more unsettling, because it means Voyager's future does not care about humanity's future. Civilizations can rise and fall, species can appear and vanish, planets can change beyond recognition, but Voyager will continue forward regardless, obeying equations that do not bend for sentiment. Its journey is indifferent, and that indifference is what makes it profound. The probe does not seek meaning, yet it carries it. The probe does not know time, yet it will outlive nearly everything familiar to us. The trajectory carved by Voyager is so stable that even major events in the solar system will not disturb it. Long after the planets shift slightly in their orbits, long after comets are flung outward or drawn inward, Voyager will remain on its path, already too far away to be pulled back. Even the Sun's slow evolution will not matter to Voyager's course. As the Sun gradually brightens over billions of years and eventually sheds its outer layers, the spacecraft will be far beyond the region where such changes have influence. This is the moment where the scale of time begins to dwarf the scale of distance, because Voyager's motion is modest by human standards but relentless by cosmic ones. At about 17 kilometers per second, Voyager does not feel fast, yet over tens of thousands of years, that speed becomes unstoppable progress. Every second it travels farther from Earth than any human has ever been. Every year it moves deeper into a future where Earth becomes increasingly irrelevant as a reference point. The idea that Voyager's path is written can feel comforting, because predictability implies control, but this predictability offers no reassurance, only certainty. The certainty is that Voyager will not stop, will not turn, and will not wait. It is already committed to a future measured not in destinations, but in durations. The solar system itself becomes just a memory behind it, shrinking not because it is forgotten, but because distance makes remembrance impractical. At this stage, Voyager's journey is less about exploration and more about persistence. It is no longer discovering new worlds, but demonstrating that motion itself can be a form of legacy. The spacecraft does not need to encounter anything meaningful for its existence to matter, because its meaning is bound to its endurance. This challenges how humans usually think about exploration, which often assumes arrival as the goal. Voyager will not arrive anywhere recognizable for a very long time, if ever, yet its journey remains valid because it is continuous. Its path cuts through space like a needle through fabric, invisible but permanent, leaving no trail except the fact that it once passed through. This is where the story subtly shifts from engineering to inevitability, because once a trajectory is locked, the future unfolds without intervention. The question is no longer whether Voyager will keep going, but how far it will go before anything interrupts it. And interruption in interstellar space is rare. The probability of Voyager colliding with another object is vanishingly small, because space is overwhelmingly empty, and stars, despite their brightness, are separated by distances so vast that direct encounters are almost non-existent. Voyager will pass near stars, but near in cosmic terms still means trillions of kilometers away. It will drift through regions where nothing happens, where time stretches and the environment remains almost unchanged. This monotony is not boring, it is profound, because it emphasizes how unusual Earth's dynamic environment really is. Voyager is entering a realm where change is slow and subtle, where the dominant force is not activity, but duration. And it is within this realm that the future checkpoints of Voyager's journey become meaningful, because while the path itself is continuous, certain moments stand out when Voyager passes near other stars or exits familiar regions of space. These moments give us anchors in time, reference points that allow us to say, this is where Voyager will be when 40,000 years have passed. The idea of 40,000 years feels abstract until we realize that Voyager is already moving toward that moment, not as a plan but as a consequence. The spacecraft does not know it is approaching that future, but the universe does not require awareness to enforce outcome. Voyager's path is a promise made by physics, and physics keeps its promises without exception. This is why the next stage of the story cannot remain abstract, because once the trajectory is understood, the future becomes traceable. The question transforms from how Voyager moves to where it will be when time itself stretches far beyond human experience. To truly grasp the significance of Voyager's journey, we must now step forward along that line it is already following, fast-forwarding not centuries but tens of thousands of years, to the first moment when Voyager's position can be meaningfully described relative to something other than Earth, which brings us directly into the next chapter, where we leave the present behind and calculate where these silent travelers will be 40,000 years from now, when the world that launched them has long since become unrecognizable. 40,000 years from now sounds like an abstract exaggeration until we remember that, for Voyager, it is simply distance multiplied by patience, because nothing about its motion changes just because human memory fades. By that time, Earth will be a profoundly different world, not in a speculative sense, but in ways guaranteed by geology, climate, and time itself. Ice ages will have come and gone. Coastlines will have shifted. Entire mountain ranges will have eroded into memory. Languages spoken today will be as inaccessible as those carved into stone millennia ago. Human civilization, if it exists at all, will be unrecognizable, shaped by pressures and possibilities we cannot predict. And while all of that unfolds, Voyager will continue on the same quiet line it has followed since the 20th century, indifferent to the drama of planetary history behind it. In 40,000 years, Voyager 1 will have traveled roughly 2 light-years farther from the Sun than it is today, placing it firmly within the local interstellar neighborhood, rather than merely beyond the solar system. Astronomers can calculate this with confidence, because stars themselves move, and their motions are slow and predictable over such timescales. Voyager 1 is currently headed in the general direction of the constellation Ophiuchus, and in about 40,000 years, it will pass relatively close to a small red dwarf star known as Gliese 445. Close, in this context, does not mean intimate or dramatic. It will not enter orbit, it will not be captured, it will not be noticed. Even at its closest approach, Voyager will still be more than a light-year away, a distance so vast that the star's gravity will barely whisper to it. Yet this moment matters because it marks the first time a human-made object passes near another star system, not as a mission, not as an exploration, but as a consequence of momentum set in motion long ago. At that point, the Sun will no longer be Voyager's nearest star. Earth will no longer be Voyager's point of origin in any practical sense. The spacecraft will exist in a region of space where the solar system is just one influence among many, no longer dominant, no longer central. This is psychologically difficult to accept, because we instinctively imagine everything as radiating outward from Earth, but Voyager's journey disproves that instinct. It does not carry Earth with it, it leaves Earth behind. By the time 40,000 years have passed, the golden record aboard Voyager will still be intact, its copper surface etched with symbols no longer explained by living hands. The sounds of waves, the images of cities, the music of Bach and Chuck Berry will remain physically present, even if the species that created them is gone. The record will not degrade quickly, because in the cold vacuum of interstellar space, chemical reactions slow to near stillness. Radiation will gradually damage its surface. Micrometeoroids may leave tiny scars, but these processes are measured in millions of years, not tens of thousands. The record's survival does not depend on hope, but on physics. Voyager itself will look much the same as it does now, its antennas fixed in position, its instruments long silent, its structure preserved by emptiness. There will be no rust, no weathering, no decay as we understand it. Voyager will not age gracefully or tragically. It will simply persist. And this persistence reframes 40,000 years not as a long time for Voyager, but as a short one. In cosmic terms, 40,000 years is barely a pause. Stars do not noticeably change. The galaxy's spiral arms barely shift. Even the sun remains fundamentally the same star it is today. Yet for humanity, 40,000 years is an eternity. Our entire recorded history fits comfortably within a fraction of that span. The fact that Voyager bridges this gap without effort is what makes its journey unsettling. It links a fragile, temporary civilization to a future where that civilization may be nothing more than an inference. If intelligence exists elsewhere in the galaxy and happens to notice Voyager at that distant moment, they would not see a functioning machine, but a relic drifting silently, its purpose unrecoverable without context. The golden record was designed precisely for this possibility, encoding mathematics, physics, and imagery meant to transcend language. But even then, understanding would not be guaranteed. Voyager does not ensure we will be known. It only ensures we were not completely erased. And this is the quiet tragedy and beauty of its 40,000-year milestone, because by then, Voyager will have become untethered not just from Earth physically, but from meaning itself. Meaning requires observers. Meaning requires memory. Voyager offers neither. It carries information without insisting it be understood. It carries evidence without demanding recognition. It moves forward as a fact rather than a message. This forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth, which is that the universe does not preserve significance, only existence. Voyager will exist regardless of whether anyone cares. The milestone of 40,000 years matters to us because it marks the first time Voyager truly becomes interstellar in a relational sense, passing nearer to another star than to our own. But to the universe, it is just another moment in uninterrupted motion. And this realization pushes the story forward rather than closing it. Because once Voyager passes that first stellar neighbor without consequence, the question becomes how much farther it will go before anything meaningful happens again. If 40,000 years changes so little for Voyager but everything for Earth, then what happens when we extend the timeline even further? When tens of thousands become hundreds of thousands, and the slow machinery of the galaxy begins to rearrange itself around these silent travelers? A question that pulls us inevitably into the next chapter, where we fast forward deeper into time and follow Voyager beyond familiar space entirely, into an era where even stars trade places and the concept of origin loses its meaning. 200,000 years from now, the distance between Voyager and its origin will no longer be something we can emotionally grasp, because by then the concept of origin itself begins to lose coherence. Earth, if it still exists as a recognizable planet, will be layered with histories stacked so deeply that the present moment would be inaccessible without archaeology bordering on mythology. Species that define today's ecosystems may be gone. Coastlines will have shifted beyond recognition. The night sky itself will look subtly different as stars drift from their familiar positions, because even the constellations we rely on as fixed anchors are only temporary patterns stretched across time. And through all of this slow, relentless transformation, Voyager will continue moving forward at nearly the same speed, unchanged in purpose, unchanged in direction, unchanged in awareness. By this point, Voyager will be far removed from the region of space we instinctively associate with the sun, not because the sun has stopped existing, but because its gravitational and cultural influence no longer dominates Voyager's frame of reference. The probe will have traveled several additional light-years, passing through regions of the galaxy where stellar neighborhoods are subtly rearranging themselves due to orbital motion around the Milky Way's center. Stars that are distant today will have shifted closer, others will have drifted away. The idea of nearby will have changed, not because Voyager moved especially fast, but because time allowed everything else to move as well. This is where deep time begins to distort intuition, because we often imagine space as static and travelers as the only things in motion, when in reality, everything is moving, including the stars themselves. Voyager will not be racing through a frozen backdrop, but sliding through a slow, cosmic current, where relative positions change gradually, but relentlessly. The Sun will no longer be Voyager's dominant reference star, not because it vanished, but because it blended into the background of many other stars exerting comparable influence. The solar system itself will have completed a small fraction of its orbit around the galactic center, carrying Earth, if it remains inhabited, into a subtly different region of the Milky Way. From Voyager's perspective, there will be no sign of this motion, no marker of progress, no indication that epochs are passing. The probe will experience 200,000 years exactly the same way it experiences 1 second, because time does not register without change, and Voyager is nearly changeless. Its structure will remain intact, its golden record will still be attached, its antennas will still point into empty space, no longer aimed at Earth, no longer waiting for commands that will never arrive. The silence will be complete, not because Voyager failed, but because communication was never meant to survive this long. Radio waves dissipate, civilizations dissolve, but objects in motion endure. By this stage, Voyager will no longer be thought of as a spacecraft in any meaningful sense, because spacecraft imply missions, destinations, and oversight. Voyager will be something else entirely, a relic drifting through the galaxy, carrying no expectations and receiving no attention. If humanity survives to this point, Voyager will almost certainly be forgotten, not out of neglect, but because survival demands focus on the present rather than artifacts of a distant past. Records may mention it, archives may preserve its story, but it will no longer matter in practical terms. And if humanity does not survive, Voyager will continue regardless, indifferent to extinction in the way only physics can be. The probe will not mark anniversaries. It will not know it has outlived its creators. It will simply persist as matter following momentum through space. This is where the story becomes less about exploration and more about endurance, because Voyager is now demonstrating something profound without intending to. It shows that human actions can echo far beyond human lifespans, not through influence or power, but through persistence. The probe's existence becomes a quiet counter-argument to the idea that meaning requires permanence. Voyager will not preserve our language, our politics, or our values, but it will preserve the fact that we acted, that we reached outward, that we made something capable of escaping us. In 200,000 years, even the memory of Earth as we know it may be inaccessible without reconstruction, yet Voyager will still be moving, still carrying evidence of that moment when a species decided to send a fragment of itself into the unknown. This distance in time strips the journey of sentimentality and leaves only consequence. The consequence is that Voyager becomes increasingly untethered from interpretation. Without observers, it is neither success nor failure. It simply is. The longer it travels, the less it belongs to us, until ownership itself becomes meaningless. This is deeply uncomfortable for human narratives, which depend on authorship and legacy, but Voyager refuses both. It is an object that will outlast intention. As centuries stack into millennia and millennia stretch into hundreds of thousands of years, Voyager's journey begins to resemble geological time rather than historical time, unfolding at a scale where individual moments dissolve into continuity. And yet, even this staggering span is still only the beginning, because 200,000 years is not deep time for the galaxy. It is only a few heartbeats in the life of stars. Voyager's path does not end here, and its story does not resolve. Instead, It presses onward into a future so distant that even stellar arrangements become unfamiliar, where millions of years pass and the galaxy itself subtly reshapes around these silent travelers. To truly grasp the weight of Voyager's endurance, we must push the timeline even further, beyond hundreds of thousands and into millions of years, where the question is no longer whether Voyager survives, but whether it will ever be noticed at all, a question that carries us directly into the next chapter, where we step into deep time and follow Voyager into an era where the universe forgets far more than it remembers. A million years into the future is where Voyager's journey stops feeling like a projection and starts feeling like a statement, because by this point, time itself has erased nearly every familiar reference humanity uses to understand existence. Earth, if it still hosts life, will no longer resemble the planet that launched Voyager in any recognizable way. Continents will have shifted measurably. Entire species will have appeared and vanished. Climate cycles will have rewritten ecosystems repeatedly. Any civilization that exists will either be unimaginably advanced or completely unrelated to the one that once pointed a radio antenna toward deep space and waited for a reply. And through all of this, Voyager will continue its silent motion, unchanged in purpose because it no longer has one, unchanged in form because space offers no pressure to become anything else. By 1 million years, Voyager will have traveled more than 15 light-years from the Sun, placing it deep within the local stellar neighborhood, surrounded not by the familiar architecture of the solar system, but by stars that were once distant background points in our night sky. The Sun itself will still exist, still shining steadily, but from Voyager's position it will be indistinguishable from countless other stars, one faint dot among many, stripped of its emotional weight and historical meaning. At this distance, Voyager no longer belongs to any system. It is not bound to the Sun. It is not approaching another star in any purposeful sense. It is a free object moving through the Milky Way, governed by galactic gravity rather than planetary influence. The galaxy itself becomes Voyager's environment, and even that environment is vast and sparse. The odds of Voyager passing close enough to any star to be gravitationally captured remain vanishingly small. Space between stars is not just empty, it is overwhelmingly empty, and Voyager will spend most of this million-year span drifting through regions where nothing happens, where distances are measured in trillions of kilometers and change is so slow it borders on stillness. This monotony is deceptive, because while Voyager experiences almost nothing, everything else continues to evolve. Stars orbit the galactic center. New stars are born. Old ones die. Supernovae reshape nearby space. Entire stellar neighborhoods subtly rearrange themselves as gravity plays out over deep time. Voyager moves through all of this like a ghost, affected only slightly by forces that reshape entire systems. Its survival does not require resilience in the way life requires resilience. It does not adapt. It does not repair. It simply persists, because there is nothing actively trying to destroy it. Radiation will continue to bombard its surface, slowly altering atomic structures, weakening materials at an almost immeasurable pace. Micrometeoroids will occasionally strike it, leaving scars too small to matter. These processes accumulate, but so slowly that even after 1 million years, Voyager will remain largely intact, a recognizable artifact of 20th century engineering drifting through a future that no longer remembers the 20th century at all. The golden record will still be attached, its copper surface dulled but not erased, its engraved symbols still present, waiting for an interpreter that may never exist. The record does not guarantee communication. It guarantees presence. It says only that something intelligent once chose to reach outward rather than inward. At this stage, Voyager becomes less a message and more a fossil, not buried in rock, but suspended in space, preserved not by care but by neglect. Fossils on Earth survive because they are isolated from destructive forces. Voyager survives for the same reason. It exists in a region where time is abundant, but interaction is rare. If another intelligence were to encounter Voyager at this point, the meeting would be profoundly asymmetrical. The probe would offer no greeting, no explanation, no confirmation of relevance. It would not react, it would not respond. Its meaning would have to be inferred from structure alone, from materials shaped in ways that suggest intention, from patterns that hint at purpose without revealing it. The golden record might help, but only if the encounter allowed for its discovery and interpretation. Even then, understanding would not be guaranteed. Mathematics may be universal, but culture is not. Voyager's message is humble in that way. It does not demand to be understood. It merely exists as evidence. This is where the idea of legacy becomes fragile, because Voyager does not preserve humanity's story in a way that ensures it will be remembered correctly, or at all. It preserves only the fact that something once reached beyond its home. That fact alone may be enough. The million-year milestone strips Voyager of any remaining connection to human intention. It is no longer an ambassador. Ambassadors represent someone. Voyager represents only itself. It does not carry orders. It does not carry updates. It does not carry relevance. It is a quiet object moving through a universe that has no obligation to notice it. This is unsettling because humans instinctively believe that actions should be witnessed to matter. Voyager challenges that belief by demonstrating that endurance does not require acknowledgement. The probe's journey suggests that significance can exist without recognition, that meaning can persist even when memory does not. This reframing forces us to reconsider why we sent Voyager at all. Not to be answered, not to be rescued, but to assert that curiosity itself is worth expressing, even when the universe remains silent. By 1 million years, Voyager's journey has become purely philosophical. It no longer informs science. It no longer returns data. It no longer participates in exploration. Yet it continues to answer a question we rarely ask directly, which is whether anything we do can matter beyond us. Voyager does not answer yes or no. It simply demonstrates that actions can extend beyond intention, that consequences can outlast creators. This realization carries a quiet weight, because it reframes humanity not as the center of the story, but as a brief contributor to a much longer narrative written by time and motion. And still, even 1 million years is not the end. It is not even close. Voyager's journey does not resolve into an encounter or a conclusion. It stretches onward into spans of time, where even stars cease to be stable landmarks, where galactic structures evolve, and where the idea of discovery itself becomes irrelevant. The question shifts again, because once Voyager has survived this long without interaction, the mystery is no longer about how long it will last, but whether it will ever be found at all. That question does not belong to Voyager, but to probability, scale, and the nature of space itself, and answering it requires stepping beyond time and into uncertainty, which is where the next chapter begins, as we ask whether these silent travelers will ever cross paths with another intelligence, or whether their destiny is not discovery, but endless solitude among the stars. The question of whether Voyager will ever be found sounds simple on the surface, but it is one of the most unsettling questions we can ask about our place in the universe, because answering it requires confronting just how empty space truly is. From Earth, the night sky looks crowded, filled with stars packed tightly together, but this is an illusion created by distance and perspective. In reality, the average separation between stars in our region of the galaxy is measured in light years, vast gulfs of emptiness where nothing interrupts motion for unimaginable spans of time. Voyager is moving through that emptiness now, and it will continue to do so for millions of years, surrounded not by destinations but by probability so low it feels almost philosophical. Even if intelligent civilizations are common in the galaxy, which we do not know, the chances that any one of them occupies the precise region of space Voyager passes through at the precise time Voyager passes through it are staggeringly small. Space is not just large, it is overwhelmingly redundant, with countless regions that will never be visited by anything at all. Voyager does not aim for stars. It does not correct its course. It does not seek encounters. It simply follows a straight line defined by ancient gravity assists, a line that threads through a cosmic volume so vast that intersecting it by chance would be extraordinary. To be found, Voyager would need to pass close enough to a star system where intelligent beings exist at the same time, and those beings would need both the capability and the curiosity to detect a small, cold, non-emitting object drifting through interstellar space. Voyager does not shine. It does not broadcast. Once its power dies, it becomes almost perfectly silent, absorbing and reflecting little radiation. Against the backdrop of space, it would be nearly invisible, indistinguishable from natural debris unless deliberately searched for. This makes discovery not impossible, but deeply unlikely. And yet unlikely is not the same as impossible, and that distinction matters, because Voyager was never sent with guarantees. It was sent with acceptance. The Golden Record does not assume it will be found. Its instructions are minimal. Its tone is humble. It does not declare ownership of Earth or superiority of humanity. It simply offers information, encoded in ways meant to be decipherable by any intelligence that understands mathematics and physics. The record acknowledges uncertainty as a feature rather than a flaw. It accepts that the universe may never answer, and that is precisely why it matters. Voyager's creators did not send it expecting contact. They sent it because the act of sending itself was meaningful. This is a subtle but profound distinction, because it separates Voyager from messages designed to elicit response. It is not a call, it is a trace. The possibility that Voyager will never be found does not negate its purpose. In some ways, it completes it. The probe exists as evidence that humanity was willing to reach outward without assurance of reward, a behavior that says more about us than any reply ever could. If Voyager is never discovered, it still fulfills its role as a permanent artifact drifting through the galaxy, carrying proof of curiosity beyond extinction. And if it is discovered, the encounter will almost certainly not resemble the stories we tell ourselves. There will be no dramatic moment of recognition, no mutual understanding, no exchange of ideas. At best, there will be inference, analysis, and speculation by beings who may not share our senses, our logic, or our concept of meaning. Voyager will not speak for us. It will not explain our mistakes or our hopes. It will only suggest that something once existed that shaped metal with intention and sent it into the void. This ambiguity is not a weakness, it is honesty. Voyager does not pretend to represent humanity fully. It represents only a moment, a decision, a willingness to accept insignificance without surrendering curiosity. The more deeply we consider the odds of discovery, the clearer it becomes that Voyager's greatest achievement is not the possibility of contact, but the certainty of continuation. It will persist regardless of outcome, moving through regions of space that may never host life, through eras when the galaxy itself looks different from how it looks now. The probe's destiny is not encounter, but endurance. And this endurance reframes how we think about legacy, because Voyager does not rely on memory, culture, or survival to matter. It exists outside those systems entirely. It is a reminder that actions can have consequences beyond intention, and that meaning does not require witnesses to exist. The silence Voyager carries is not emptiness, but neutrality. It neither confirms nor denies our importance. It simply refuses to care. That refusal is what makes the probe so unsettling, because it exposes a truth we rarely confront, which is that the universe does not preserve us, explain us, or remember us by default. If we are remembered at all, it will be by accident, through artifacts that happen to persist. Voyager may become one such artifact, or it may drift forever unseen. Both outcomes are equally consistent with its purpose. As this realization settles, the story shifts again, because once we accept that Voyager may never be found, we are forced to confront the deeper implication, which is not about aliens or discovery, but about us. If Voyager is never encountered, if its golden record never plays for another mind, then its role as humanity's ambassador becomes symbolic rather than functional. It becomes evidence not of communication but of intention, and that intention carries weight, because it reveals how humanity chose to act when faced with the vastness of space. This leads us inevitably into the next chapter, Because the most haunting aspect of Voyager's journey is not whether it will be found, but that it will continue even if humanity does not, raising the question of what it means to leave something behind when there may be no one left to remember who we were. A question that defines the final stages of this story as it turns inward and asks what Voyager truly guarantees, even in a universe that may never answer back. If humanity disappears, Voyager does not notice, and that indifference is what makes its existence so profound. Because for the first time in our history, we created something that does not require us to survive in order to continue. Civilizations are fragile in ways we rarely acknowledge while living inside them. Built from language, memory, cooperation, and continuity, all of which depend on uninterrupted chains of transmission. When those chains break, cultures collapse quickly, sometimes within generations, sometimes within moments, leaving behind ruins that fade into geology and myths that dissolve into silence. Voyager exists outside that fragility. It does not depend on memory, it does not depend on maintenance, it does not depend on survival. Once launched, it became immune to extinction in a way no living system ever can be. Even if humanity vanishes completely, whether through slow decline, sudden catastrophe, or transformation into something unrecognizable, Voyager will continue forward, carrying proof not of who we became, but of the fact that we were here at all. This distinction matters, because survival preserves stories, but existence preserves evidence. Voyager does not care whether our languages endure or our cities remain. It does not carry our politics or our conflicts. It carries only the physical imprint of intelligence acting with intention. That makes it an artifact, rather than a message, a fossil, rather than a voice. Fossils do not explain themselves. They require inference. They tell future observers not what happened, but that something happened. In that sense, Voyager is the ultimate fossil, drifting not through sediment but through spacetime, preserved by emptiness rather than burial. If humanity disappears, Voyager becomes the last object in the universe that can say, without words, that a technological civilization once emerged around a yellow star in a spiral galaxy and chose to reach outward. This is a quieter form of immortality than we usually imagine, but it may be the only one that actually exists. Monuments crumble, archives burn, digital records decay, even planets change beyond recognition. Voyager avoids all of these fates not by design but by circumstance. It survives because space is indifferent, because nothing touches it, because time does not press against it the way it presses against living systems. The probe does not resist entropy through repair or adaptation. It simply avoids it by drifting where entropy acts slowly. This reveals a truth that is uncomfortable to sit with, which is that endurance does not always belong to the strongest or the most complex, but often to the simplest objects placed in the quietest environments. Voyager outlives us not because it is superior, but because it is alone. If humanity disappears, there will be no one left to interpret Voyager's golden record as intended. The sounds of Earth etched into copper will remain, but meaning requires minds, and minds require continuity. This does not invalidate the record, it redefines it. The golden record was never a guarantee of communication. It was an expression of hope, tempered by realism. Its creators understood that it might never be heard, and they accepted that outcome as part of the gesture. In doing so, they acknowledged something rare, which is that meaning does not require reception to be meaningful. Voyager becomes a testament not to success, but to intention. It says that at least once, intelligence chose to act beyond self-preservation, beyond immediate utility, and beyond certainty. That choice matters, even if no one ever witnesses it. If humanity vanishes, Voyager also becomes the only object capable of contradicting the universe's silence with evidence. The universe is not hostile to us. It is simply indifferent. It does not preserve species. It does not record history. It does not reward effort. Voyager is the exception not because the universe values it, but because physics allows it to persist. That persistence exposes how fleeting biological existence really is when placed against cosmic timescales. We often imagine extinction as erasure, as though once a species is gone, it never existed. Voyager denies that fantasy. It ensures that extinction does not mean absolute absence. Somewhere, long after Earth is quiet, a machine shaped by hands that no longer exist will continue forward, untouched by the reasons those hands disappeared. This forces a rethinking of what legacy actually means. Legacy is often framed as remembrance, but remembrance is temporary. Voyager offers a different form of legacy, one rooted in physical continuation rather than cultural survival. It is not remembered, it remains. That difference is subtle but crucial. Remaining does not require recognition. It does not require validation. It simply requires that something was set in motion and not stopped. Voyager is proof that humanity crossed a threshold where its actions escaped its lifespan. That threshold changes how extinction itself is understood. Humanity may vanish, but humanity will not have been completely undone. There will still be a trace, a fragment, a piece of shaped matter moving through the galaxy that cannot be explained without invoking intelligence. That does not save us. It does not comfort us. But it does mean that existence leaves scars, even when memory does not. The more deeply we consider this, the more Voyager begins to feel less like a spacecraft and more like a mirror held up to our fears. We fear being forgotten because we know forgetting is inevitable. Voyager does not prevent forgetting. It makes forgetting incomplete. It creates a gap between disappearance and erasure, and that gap is where meaning lingers, however faintly. This is not a triumphant idea. It is a sober one. Voyager does not guarantee glory. It guarantees only that we were not invisible. If another intelligence encounters Voyager long after humanity is gone, they will not learn our names, our stories, or our struggles. They may not even understand that we were biological. But they will know that something capable of abstract thought existed. They will know that intelligence arose at least once in this region of the universe. And if they never encounter it, Voyager still fulfills the same role, because its purpose was never dependent on being found. It exists as a counterweight to cosmic indifference, not by demanding attention, but by enduring without it. This realization shifts the emotional center of the story, because it removes the need for discovery as validation. Voyager does not need to be seen to matter. It matters because it was made, because it was released, because it continues. In that sense, Voyager becomes humanity's quietest and most honest monument. Not carved into stone, not placed on Earth, but sent away from us, precisely because Earth could not preserve it. And this leads to the final question that hangs over the entire journey, which is not where Voyager will be, or whether it will be found, but what it ultimately represents. Is it a message? Is it a relic? Is it a mistake? Or is it something rarer, an object that reveals that even knowing our impermanence, we chose to act anyway? That question cannot be answered by physics or astronomy. It belongs to reflection rather than measurement. And it is that reflection that carries us into the final chapter, where the journey stops being about distance and time and becomes about meaning itself, about what it means to send something into forever without expecting anything in return. In the end, the true destination of Voyager is not a star, not a system, and not a moment in time, but forever itself, because forever is the only place large enough to hold what it represents. Voyager does not race toward an ending. It drifts away from one, slipping gradually out of relevance, out of memory, and out of history, until only motion remains. Long after its last transmission fades into cosmic background noise, long after the Deep Space Network stops listening, long after Earth itself may have changed beyond recognition, Voyager will still be moving, still obeying the same equations that launched it into silence. This is what makes it unlike any object humanity has ever created, because it was never designed to return, never designed to be retrieved, and never designed to be preserved by care. It survives not because it is protected, but because it has been released. Voyager exists beyond intention now, beyond purpose, beyond meaning as humans usually define it. And yet that is precisely why it matters. It reveals something fundamental about who we were at the moment we let it go. We were a species aware of its own fragility, aware of the possibility that it might not last, and yet unwilling to remain contained by that awareness. We chose to send something forward even knowing we might not be there to follow it. That choice is the quiet core of Voyager's legacy. The golden record was never a guarantee of contact, but an acceptance of uncertainty. It was not sent because discovery was likely, but because silence felt wrong. It was an admission that even if the universe never answers, the act of asking still has value. Voyager does not shout into the void. It whispers, and then it keeps going. This is why Voyager's journey feels less like exploration and more like philosophy set into motion. It does not conquer space. It does not claim territory. It does not demand attention. It simply exists, carrying the physical proof that intelligence once reached outward without knowing why it mattered. That proof will outlast nations, languages, species, and perhaps even memory itself. Voyager does not preserve our stories, but it preserves our curiosity, frozen into metal and copper and silicon, drifting between stars that neither know nor care it is there. In that sense, Voyager is not an ambassador to aliens, but a mirror held up to ourselves across time. It asks a question we rarely confront directly, which is whether meaning requires permanence, or whether it can exist in a single decision made without expectation of reward. Voyager suggests the latter. It suggests that meaning can exist in the act alone, detached from outcome. That is a deeply uncomfortable idea in a world obsessed with results, success, and validation. Voyager does not succeed or fail. It simply continues. And that continuation exposes how much of human anxiety is tied to being remembered, to being seen, to being acknowledged. Voyager offers no reassurance on those fronts. It does not promise that we will be known, understood, or even noticed. It promises only that we were real enough to leave something behind. This is not a triumphant promise. It is a sober one. Voyager does not save us from extinction. It does not protect our legacy in any comforting sense. It merely ensures that extinction does not mean absolute erasure. Somewhere, long after Earth's oceans may have boiled away or frozen solid, long after the sun has shifted and the stars have rearranged themselves, a machine built by hands that no longer exist will still be moving through space, untouched by the reasons those hands disappeared. That machine will not explain us. It will not defend us. It will not justify us. It will simply exist as evidence that intelligence once arose here and chose to act. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is all any species can ever hope to leave behind. Voyager reframes humanity's place in the universe not as central or exceptional, but as temporary and expressive. We were here briefly, and we chose to reach outward. The universe did not ask us to. It did not reward us for it. It may never even notice. And yet, the reaching happened. The act cannot be undone. Voyager is the physical residue of that choice, drifting through a cosmos that is indifferent but vast enough to carry it forever. When we imagine Voyager's future, we often imagine discovery, encounter, or recognition, because those are the endings we understand. But the more honest ending is quieter. Voyager may never be found. Its golden record may never be played. Its message may never be decoded. And none of that diminishes what it represents. In a universe defined by entropy and impermanence, Voyager is a reminder that motion itself can be a form of meaning. That persistence does not require memory. That legacy does not require witnesses. The universe does not remember us. It does not owe us remembrance. Voyager accepts that reality and moves forward anyway. And in doing so, it offers perhaps the most honest answer to the fear of being forgotten. We will be forgotten. But we will not have been nothing. Voyager carries that truth into the dark, not as a demand, not as a plea, but as a quiet fact etched into metal and released into time, somewhere far beyond the reach of Earth and long beyond the reach of memory. A small machine continues to travel, not because it knows where it is going, but because once set in motion, it never needed to know.